Hey everyone, happy Tuesday. Welcome to Clarity and Confidence Live. We are talking about my favorite topic today. We are talking about the Enneagram and leadership. If you know your Enneagram number, I would love for you to drop it in the comments. If you don't know your number, that's fine. I'm going to give you some clues and we're going to talk all about this amazing professional development tool today. So, I just want to talk a little bit about my journey with the Enneagram. We're going to talk about what it is. We're going to talk about the different 9 types. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how women can use it to really own their leadership strengths and to even maybe bypass some of those flaws that we've always been said that we have. If you're just joining me live, say hi and tell me in the comments what your number is or what you think you might be. I would love to hear it. So, my journey with the Enneagram, I want to say, is fairly recent. So, I've always been a personal development junkie. I have never met a personality test that I did not like. I've taken the DISC. I'm a D. I've taken the Myers-Briggs. I'm an INTJ. I know my Gallup strengths. They are relator, futuristic, learner, input, and sometimes maximizer will sneak in there sometimes. So I love all that stuff. And I remember first hearing about the Enneagram a couple years ago. And I remember thinking, like, I don't know what that is. It feels really like esoteric, if that's the right word. I don't know if it's proven. I really didn't want a lot to do with it, but it kept like coming in front of my face. And I was like, okay, fine. I'm just going to take this test and this free test online. So I took a free test online, and the free test online said that I was an Enneagram 1. And so I read the description and I thought, well, yeah, this kind of fits. I can kind of see this. I can kind of see where maybe, I'm looking to do things the right way, or I strive, to do or be good and look a certain way. And I was like, that kind of makes sense. And so I kind of went through the world thinking that I was an Enneagram 1 and I just had a really strong, what they call a 9 wing. So I had a lot of characteristics of a 9 as well. And then as I started to dive in more, I started to question my type. And I thought, this is actually just really interesting because this is where I started to learn more about the Enneagram. And I'll tell you exactly what it is. So, again, if you're joining, drop your number. I would love to know if you know your number, and I'll give you clues here. So, the Enneagram is a Greek word. Ennea means 9. Gram means something that is written down. So literally Enneagram. And so I'm certified in the integrative Enneagram. And so like this is just a diagram of the 9 types. So Enneagram. It sounds like a funny word, but that's all it means is a 9-figure drawing is literally what that means. And it basically says that there are 9 types. And while the Enneagram feels new in modern culture, it actually has ancient roots. So like they can trace the Enneagram back to like the writings of Homer's Odyssey. It's not religious, even though I think sometimes you see it in certain circles. It actually has psychology and neuroscience background, and I can get all into that in detail if that's something that you're interested in. We can talk offline. But basically, it only sounds like it's new in modern culture because it only has been socialized in the United States, probably just in the recent, last 3 or 4 decades. And then with the explosion of all of this online teaching and Instagram, it's really become more accessible for people because it's kind of traveled outside just, specific communities. And so as I dug it more into this, I thought this is a powerful personal development tool because the Enneagram is a little bit different from like the Myers-Briggs and the Strengths Finder and the DISC. So the Myers-Briggs, Strengths Finder, and the DISC are very good at telling you what you do. So if I am an INTJ, I'm like, oh, I'm an introvert. I'm an intuitive, so I see things big picture. I'm a thinker, which means I make decisions based on logic versus values or emotion. And J, judging, it means I like timelined approach to things. But it doesn't tell me why I am those things. And I feel like a lot of the personality assessments like tell you what you are and what you do, but they're kind of like, hey, here's what you are. Good luck. And some people think, okay, well, it kind of puts me in a box. I'm this thing. But the Enneagram is different. It tells you why you do those things. It tells me why I'm an INTJ, why I have these strengths. I kind of liken it that if the MBTI is like the car that you drive, and your Gallup strengths are like some of the features that you have in your car, then the Enneagram tells you what's under the hood. It tells you why everything is working the way it does, because the Enneagram tells you what your core fear is. What are you constantly working to avoid in your life? It tells you what your core motivation is. Like underneath all of your behaviors, why are you doing the things that you do? And it gives you a path. I always say it gives you 5 paths for growth to help you move into your highest self. It helps you be the best leader it can be. It can help you move beyond like your old habits, your old behaviors, and recognize why you're doing those things, and using a value system, help you show up more effectively, help you embrace your leadership gifts, and really remove what's been holding you back sometimes your whole life. So that's why I personally use the Enneagram with my clients. I use it in my group program, and then I really dig in deep with my clients, not only how they can again overcome like old habits, but really boost their leadership skills and show up as their best selves. At the end of the day, it makes you more emotionally intelligent. I was just having a conversation with a leader literally just before this, and she's an Enneagram 3, very assertive, like a lot of my women leaders are, and was frustrated with some people at work. And so we just talked about how, well, there's actually 3 different working styles at work. There's assertive types like yourself, which are 3s, 7s, and 8s. They like just to go. They like to get stuff done. But there's compliant types at work. There's your 1, 2s, and 6s who are like, let's check the rule book first. Let's see how people are going to respond to this. Let's check and see what we've always done. And it drives assertives crazy. Well, there's withdrawn types at work. There's 4, 5s, and 9s who like to go inward first to check in to see how they feel. And sometimes we'll come back to you 3 days later with an idea that you'd already passed like 3 days ago. And she's like, those people drive me nuts. And so we had a really fun laugh about how, but they drive you nuts, because you're moving too fast. You're not checking in. You're breaking the rules. And so this is why I love the Enneagram, is because it builds emotional intelligence. It gives us a language to talk about things. It's like, oh, that person's not trying to like push my buttons. They're just a 2. And this is just the way they view the world. This is the way they move through life. And so by sharing that understanding, by naming some of this, it helps us build more emotional intelligence, that there's people in the workplace who don't work like us, who don't think like us, who don't act like us. And so it helps us collaborate. It helps us build relationships. It helps us be better leaders. The more we can understand ourselves, the better we can understand others. So let's talk through the 9 types. I'm going to walk through each of the 9 types and what their core desires are. What's motivating them? I think that's really important to understand what motivates people in the workplace, because then we can get a better understanding of why they react the way they do, why they do the things they do. So if you know your type, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear. And then maybe I can have y'all guess what my type is. So the 9 Enneagram types, these are the motivators for each of the 9 types. So take a listen and see if any one of these resonate with you. Okay, so type 1, the motivator for a type 1 is, and I'm bringing this over, okay, is to be good, to have integrity, and to be right or perfect, and to avoid mistakes. So in everything that ones do, they want to be seen as good and right and perfect. Okay, sometimes these are called perfectionists, but there can be a lot of perfectionists on the Enneagram. Okay, that can be a stereotype, but they're always looking what can be improved. So these are the people who can walk into a room or look at a report and instantly see everything that was missed and can be improved. Type 2s. And before I go into type 2, I want to talk about some of the stereotypes that women leaders get here. I think this is really important because, I think that the world still defines like executive presence as like a masculine thing. And that when women show up a certain way, even though maybe it's the same way their male counterpart would show up, they tend to get labeled. And so I think sometimes when women who are ones sometimes can get be stereotyped as rigid or critical. But really they're not being rigid and critical. And when they're showing up as a leader, as their best selves, they actually bring the gift of wisdom, very discerning, always knowing what the right thing to do is, the right way forward. Okay, so let's talk about type 2 leaders. The motivation of a type 2 leader is to feel loved, needed, and appreciated. So, that can show up in a lot of different ways, but the way that they're moving through the world is to feel loved. They love feeling appreciation. They want to feel needed. And so sometimes the stereotype that this can cause is, oh, they're a people pleaser. Oh, they're meddling because they're always, hovering and micromanaging to see, where they can add value. But really, when type twos are showing up as their best selves, they bring the gift of being empathetic and supportive because they know how to read people and what people need. They know what people need in organizations, and that's the gift that they bring. So then there's type three leaders. Type three leaders, they are motivated by the need to feel valuable and worthwhile, to succeed and be the best at what they do. So sometimes type three leaders can get stereotyped as being super competitive or being, wanting to be seen or wanting to be at the top or wanting to be the superstar. And again, that's a stereotype because when type threes are healthy and they're showing up as their best selves, they're super focused. They're very efficient. They know exactly what needs to get done to maximize ROI, and they can be incredibly energetic. Type four leaders, they're motivated by a need to find themselves and their significance. Like they're working to create an identity and to express their individuality. So type four leaders sometimes can get the stereotype that, oh, they're just too emotional to be a leader or they're too sensitive. But really, type four leaders at their best are incredibly authentic. They know how to bring creativity to the workplace and they know how to forge deep, authentic connections, which is their superpower. Type five leaders, they're motivated by a need to be capable and competent. They want to be independent and not rely on other people for resources. And so sometimes type five leaders, especially women, can get the stereotype or be told, well, you are just you're abrasive, you're direct, you work too much in a silo, you're too focused on not details per se, but too focused on working by yourself. But really, when type five leaders are showing up as their best selves, they are incredibly perceptive, incredibly innovative with the ability to connect the dots across many different disciplines. Type six leaders, they are motivated by the need to have security and support and reassurance. Okay, they always want to feel secure and reassured in their position or with people. And so sometimes type six leaders can be stereotyped to say, well, they're just too anxious or too doubtful, or they are always devil's advocate. These are the devil's advocates in the room sometimes saying, well, have we tried this? Have you thought about this? They can think of every worst case scenario. But type six leaders at their best when they're showing up as themselves are incredibly courageous. They're very loyal. They build very strong teams. They can be very strategic. Type seven leaders are motivated by the need to be satisfied and content, to have their needs fulfilled, to avoid pain and experience all of the possibilities. They don't want to be limited at all. They want all the ideas, all the possibilities, all the things. And so sometimes type seven leaders can get a stereotype. Oh, they're too scattered to be a leader. They're too impulsive. They keep changing. But really, type seven leaders can make excellent leaders because when they show up as their best selves, they're incredibly visionary. They have visionary ideas and they're very entrepreneurial. Type eight leaders, they're motivated by a need to protect themselves, to be in control of their own life and destiny, and they want to stay in control. They don't necessarily want to control their people. They are always working to control themselves and to eliminate any vulnerability. And especially as a woman leader, type eight women leaders can sometimes be called intimidating, controlling, bossy, aggressive, that maybe their male counterparts have not been called, because type 8's characteristics many times have been ascribed to successful male leaders, but not women leaders. So that's a little nuance to take into consideration. But at their best, type 8 leaders are assertive, influential. They gather teams and they get things done. What I love about the type 8 women leaders that I coach is they are not afraid to take something horribly messy, a messy project, a high stakes project, a touchy project, grab it, organize it, make sense of it, and build a coalition around it and launch it and build it up. It's really amazing. Most of the people will be like, I'm not touching that, but not an 8. 8 will touch it. Type 9 leaders, they are motivated by the need to have inner stability, peace of mind, to create harmony and avoid conflict. And so sometimes they can get a stereotype of being indecisive or wishy-washy or disengaged or, doesn't want to make anyone upset. But really, type 9 leaders at their best are genuine and inclusive. They can take many different viewpoints and make all of that into a thing where everyone feels included and heard, and design solutions that are very inclusive. And so this is why I love the Enneagram, because I think sometimes, especially, there are some gender stereotypes. I think that society, and I'm putting that in parentheses, say that, what, women should maybe show up and be very 2-ish or 9-ish, meaning, what, they should be very empathetic and caring and people pleasing and set aside their own needs and avoid conflict and build consensus. And I think sometimes that is the label that women get. And so when women don't show up that way, I see especially a lot of type 1, 5, and 8 leaders who sometimes move against some of those gender norms. So type 5s can move against gender norms because they just don't have the desire to engage and participate in some socially normative activities like group outings, Friday afternoon clubs. It's not that they are isolationists or they don't have friends, but sometimes they just don't engage in some of the social niceties and norms and conversations that you would see a type 2 or 3 or 9 doing, because that's just how they're wired up. And so they can be told as they can be seen as direct or withdrawn. Type 8 leaders, as I've talked about, sometimes defy gender norms because they have some masculine leadership qualities that what men use, it's not a big deal. But when they show up as a woman in that way, they can be labeled aggressive or assertive or bossy. Type 1 leaders too, I see this. Type 1s are highly competent leaders. They want to get to the point. They want to get down to it. They can see flaws to a fault, but that's great because they also can see how things can be very, very good. They can see where things can be improved. They know the right way to do things, but sometimes they can get labeled as a little bit critical or rigid because they do have that critical eye, which is actually their gift. They can see greatness and how things can be great. So I'd be super curious. Did any of this give you insight, whether you're watching this live or on replay, on what number you think you might be? Have you ever, been told or labeled one of these things? How I love to use the Enneagram with my clients is both in my group programs and in my one-on-one program is that's the first thing we do is we take the Enneagram assessment and we talk about our number and we talk about what motivates us. We talk about what fears we have, what holds us back, how that shows up in the world, where our blind spots are. And then we're always working even too, like, well, what labels have you been called, right? And how your flaws, how could these actually be your greatest gift? And how can you use these in the world? And again, we're always working through and talking about, because we all have blind spots. To let the cat out of the bag, I'm an Enneagram 5. I have a lot of blind spots. I want to be competent and capable. Sometimes that means I procrastinate until I feel like I'm totally competent, which really has not been helpful in my career. I've procrastinated on too many things. I've delayed too many things that could have been launched sooner or earlier to have better impact. As a 5, I really manage my time, energy, and resources, which means sometimes I can over manage my calendar and say no to too many things. So instead of having boundaries, I can have barricades. That doesn't help me when I'm working to build relationships. So there's always blind spots, and each type has a blind spot. And by working through those, overcoming them, and recognizing how we can show up as our highest selves really opens up a whole new world of leadership for us. It helps us find our voice. It helps us be a little bit more assertive, or it helps us reel ourselves back in and be a little bit more thoughtful if that's an opportunity for us. It helps us really step into our power and identity to learn how to influence people and to build relationships. As a leader, it's helped my women leaders better understand themselves and better understand their team. So if you're curious more about the Enneagram, I'm going to drop some free 2 things in the comments. One, I'm going to drop a link where you can get free resources, including a free typing guide. It's a typing exercise that I'll walk you through. It's just a replay you can access anytime, along with some of my favorite books and some of my favorite podcasts. And the second thing I'm going to drop in the comments is a link to an Enneagram coaching session that I offer. So I don't offer standalone coaching sessions except for the Enneagram. So if you are curious on actually confirming and nailing down your type, I'll drop a link to where you can schedule a private, I call it a private Enneagram workshop with me. And what this is I have you take the integrative Enneagram assessment. This is what I held up earlier. It's the IEQ9 assessment. It's 95% accurate. Most free tests on the internet are at best 50% accurate. This one's actually 95%. And it actually gives you a 23-page report of not only your type, but what's called your 5 paths for growth. So how you can grow in your type, how you can use what's called the wings, which are the numbers on each side of your type to improve your problem solving and communication skills, and how you can use what's called your lines of integration. So this is where you go to in growth and in stress to help you show up as the best version of you. And we talk about all of that. So you'll get your type. You're going to get a replay of an Enneagram workshop I did, a paid Enneagram workshop I did last year. And then you also get a 60-minute one-on-one session with me, and we can talk about, any specific topic related to Enneagram and leadership and how your specific Enneagram type can help you show up as your best self. So I'll drop both links. But if you have any questions about the Enneagram, message me, drop it in the comments, tell me what number you think you are or what question you've always had, and I'll come back and monitor those. So I hope this has been helpful. But at the end of the day, I love the Enneagram because I always say that we can't develop others to a higher level than we develop ourselves. And the Enneagram is amazing because it will help you show up as your best self. So can't wait to hear your thoughts and reflections. And I would love to hear from you if you have any other questions. So I hope you have an amazing week, and I'll be back on here next week and talk to you soon.